Thank you, Carla. I'm going to attempt to explain the California State Assembly. You guys ready for that? I'm going to do my best. I'm actually going to read it because it's a lot easier. My full understanding is not as comprehensive, but the California State Assembly is the lower chamber of the California State Legislature. So those who don't know, like myself, we're going to get a little quick insight. Alongside with the California State Senate, it basically forms the legislative branch of the California state government, working alongside the governor to create laws and establish a state budget. We all know about the state budget. We all know about laws. It's nice to know who comes together to form those pieces. I myself, clearly a public school graduate, but legislative authority and responsibilities of the California State Assembly, they include passing bills on public policy matters, setting levels for state spending, and raising and lowering taxes, as well as voting to uphold or override gubernatorial vetoes. So these are really important people that we're talking to today who are running for this space. California's 18th district is one of 80 California State Assembly districts. It is currently vacant since Democrat Rob Bonta of Alameda left the Assembly to become the Attorney General of California. So the district includes parts of Oakland, San Leandro, and Alameda. And as you can tell, those who are here with us today, the candidates, are very important, and we want to make sure that we are informed. So we are really happy to have them all here. Thankful for you all to be joining us and excited to jump in. Should we jump in?
Thank you so much. I'm Mia Bonta. I was raised by activists who, as members of the Young Lords Party in New York, were making the same kinds of demands for justice that we want and that the Black Panthers made here in Oakland, making sure that we are having greater police oversight, a right to housing, food security, and equity in education, all issues that 50 years later we're still fighting for. My parents taught me about the power of being an advocate through service, and I am so proud to have been fighting for our children and our East Bay communities for over 20 years here. I come to work in our community not from theory, but really from lived experience. I see myself in so many of our young brothers and sisters here who have grown up with an experience similar to mine. And as a Black Latina, I've had to make some trade-offs in my life, ending at different times. I'm running for state assembly because I want to work on behalf of East Bay's children and families. And I've seen our community displaced, dismissed, and sometimes dying. And we need to be able to change that. I'm running for assembly because AD 18 deserves a strong—
Thank you, time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janani Ramachandran. I'm a social justice attorney, a former Oakland Public Ethics Commissioner, and a community activist. And I'm running for state assembly because we don't need just another moderate Democrat bought by corporate interests. We need a leader who is going to push for true progressive change, which is why I'm fighting for a $22 minimum wage, Medicare for all with comprehensive mental health services, repealing Costa-Hawkins and the Ellis Act, ending qualified immunity, a Green New Deal with the racial equity lens. And I am driven to run because the voices of our community members that have been drowned out by our inequitable and racist systems. I'm proud to have the support of the Wellstone Democrats, the Oakland East Bay Democrats, Our Revolution, the Sunrise Movement, Indivisible, ILWU, the Oakland Tenants Union, and so many others. And I would love all of your support too in this movement so we can fight for the changes that we all want to see.
Question one, and this is going to go to Janani first. What are your top 3 priorities for the district? And just to understand, everyone's going to have 1 minute to speak, and then we're going to go into a 30-second rebuttal afterwards. So first up to tell us about their top 3 priorities for the city, Janani Ramachandran.
District,
Excuse me.
Firstly, solutions to our housing and homelessness crisis. We need a 10-year comprehensive strategic plan to address homelessness, which has grown by 50% in Oakland in the past 3 years. We need solutions, we need stronger statewide tenant protections so that our communities can stop being displaced. As a former tenants' rights attorney, I am driven to run for this seat because of the number of people that I've worked with being evicted in Oakland, including during the pandemic. Second, we need a Green New Deal with the racial equity lens that creates tens of thousands of jobs that are well paying, because all of us deserve to breathe clean air and live free of environmental damage and wildfires. And three, criminal justice reform, starting with ending qualified immunity and funding the powerful restorative justice programs, including the 3 that I've worked with right here in Oakland that do powerful work for this city. Those are 3 of my top priorities.
My top priorities are recovering and rebuilding after this pandemic. It's laid to bear so many structural inequities across all of our systems that we really need to be able to focus on, including health justice, our ability to have access to quality health care, and ensuring that we have the ability to rebuild economically in terms of worker individual rights and to support our small businesses. We need to make sure that our schools can reopen so that our students can continue to dream, and our parents can make sure to be able to go back to work so that our economy opens. And finally, because this is our district and because it is the state of California, we need to care deeply about our unhoused neighbors and ensuring that we are building out housing affordability that ensures that people stop getting displaced in this beautiful district of ours in Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. So we're going to have 30 seconds of rebuttal, and this order will repeat. So we're going to go in the same order, starting with Janani Ramachandran. Please, you have 30 seconds for any rebuttal.
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize my commitment to these specific issues. As someone who was, driven to work with tenants during the pandemic, I was inspired to run for the seat because of that. But expanding on, our broader housing crisis, we need to build a stronger middle class in order for more individuals to be able to get on a pathway to home ownership, pay living wages so people can be able to own their homes, which will consequently allow people build a greater tax base.
These issues are personal to me. The personal is political. I was somebody who moved 13 times in 16 years. I was somebody who had to move out of an apartment because I was getting lead poisoned and broke out in rashes. I am somebody who has worked for 25 years with our community, with students who have been striving to be able to succeed. And I am somebody who has experienced the chaos of having to deal with the transition of not having stability in housing. This district does need somebody who has the direct experience personally to be able to represent that in the State House, as well as working directly with people who have been impacted. Our people are not abstractions.
Okay, so our second question is, and this is going to go to Victor, I believe, first. Okay, so the second question is, how do you define police reform, and what steps do you plan to take to address it?
Police reform to me means that we're actually creating a public safety system that people can trust. We've had an eroded trust system because our police have not been people that people like me have felt safe in supporting. That's why I support Senator Bradford's bill, who endorsed me, to make sure SB2 allow us to be able to decertify police officers, because we know that all law enforcement officers shouldn't be able to commit serious misconduct against the people in one's county and then pop over into another county. To me, police reform ensures that we're supporting alternatives to policing through efforts like macro, and that we're building up and reforming community police relations, because they're broken right now. And we need to be able to ensure that public safety actually means that for every single individual. And finally, we do need to make sure that we have a robust system that ensures that there is accountability and transparency, which we don't have right now. And I encourage and believe in the fact that we need to have independent investigations so that when police are engaged in misconduct, and that they pay for that.
1,172 people were killed by police last year. I define true police reform is bringing that number down to 0 and ensuring that any officer who causes harm is actually brought to justice. So first, I support SB 2 to decertify officers who have caused harm so they can't be fired from OPD for killing someone and then rehired in Modesto and Vallejo, things we know happen all the time. And I would expand this further to make sure that all civilians have the fundamental right to sue officers who cause harm. Second, I would eliminate the Police Bill of Rights, so it's not so difficult to access critical records and information for officers who have committed misconduct. SB 1421 was a good start, and we must expand that to demand the release of all records, including allegations of sexual assault, an issue I've worked on throughout my legal career, even if they were not determined guilty of misconduct. And finally, I would make sure that the police spend less of their time working on nonviolent crime. Here in Oakland, OPD only spends 4% of their time on violent crime.
The reality is that police reform is something that we've been dealing with generationally. And while it's become something that we focused on right now, it is something that we haven't seen our cities be able to address with the kind of urgency that we need. And as a result of that, we've ended up with people, Black and brown people who have ended up dead. So we do need to make sure that we have a statewide effort to ensure that we have cities don't have the kind of discretion that they have so that our people can be protected, and ensure that they have, and ensure that our community-based organizations and our advocates are able to seek the justice that they deserve.
I'm just going to add 2 points to specifically say why I will be a champion for police reform. And that's because I've spent my entire career working with survivors of domestic violence and individuals in mental health crisis, 2 categories of people who are truly not served by the police. I've worked with immigrant survivors of domestic violence who have been criminalized by the police, who have been the ones, because of mandatory arrest laws, the ones thrown in jail rather than their abusive partners, criminalized for choosing to call the police and choosing to get help. I've worked with survivors of abuse who have not had their restraining orders enforced by police officers.
Our next question is actually very, very central to a lot of what we have happening in our communities, and that's, what are your plans to address the unhoused communities within the district?
We know that the face of homelessness has changed. We're seeing more children and families, I was out one paycheck away from not being able to afford their home. And we know that the mental health needs of our unhoused neighbors are really at the core of what we need. So we need to ensure that we're expanding programs like creating permanency from Project Room Key to Project Home Key, so that we can establish permanent programs to support our unhoused neighbors, and doing things like making sure that we're issuing state funds to be able to buy hotels at a grand scale, to be able to make sure that we're getting eliminating homelessness in our state, which we should be able to do. We need to be able to create more transitional spaces, and we need to ensure that the housing and site services and that we offer to our homeless population are specific to them, catered to what they need, and are really humanizing our unhoused neighbors in a way that we've not really been able to step up to the challenge to before in this state.
Firstly, as I mentioned before, we need a 10-year comprehensive plan to address our homelessness crisis along the maps of programs like Roadmap Home 2030. We need a plan that takes into consideration the various needs of our unhoused community, whether it's domestic violence survivors, LGBTQ youth, people battling addiction. We need dignified housing, not tough sheds. We need solutions, not band-aids. We need leaders who don't just throw money at homelessness for a photo op and hoping the problem goes away. We also need to bring back redevelopment dollars and restore the ability of local governments to use these authorities to fund government social housing for low-income communities. And finally, we need mental health services that are accessible to everyone, trauma-informed, and are efficient. Here in Oakland, we have programs that are specifically meant to serve Black communities that are going underwater during COVID, that are not supported by our regional social services agencies, and that are being threatened to go away every single day. People who do life-saving work to support our unhoused community.
Please.
Ultimately, we have to make sure that we're growing the housing pipeline to address the deficit of 185,000 extremely low income rental units that we need in our Bay Area counties to make sure that our unhoused neighbors can become housed. And we need to make sure at a state level, the legislature is focused on providing financing tools to be able to preserve the affordable housing that we do have and expand that in a way that ensures that we are providing our most marginalized neighbors the kinds of supports and services that they need. It's a statewide problem that deserves a localized effort, but we need to make sure that we're having every city take on its fair share of ensuring that we have the kind of housing that we need to be able to house our unhoused neighbors.
Please.
I just want to make one point that the very day after this special election, our statewide eviction moratorium ends, it expires. 3 million people, 3 million tenants across California cannot afford to pay rent next month. And almost half of them did not benefit from SB 91, which was supposed to be a rental relief bill. And I just want to bring light to the fact that our unhoused population of 160,000 people on a given night is about to get extremely worse with an eviction tsunami that is about to happen if we don't extend this eviction moratorium, if we don't keep people housed. Yes.
Okay, so moving on to question 4. So the question is, do you support single payer healthcare systems? And if so, how do you envision it would work? And if not, why?
I am fully in support of a single payer healthcare system. We need to ensure that we have Medicare for all and that we have a single payer system in place. That will require us to have state, federal, and federal negotiations to ensure that our prescription drug prices are actually affordable. And it will require that the state create a Medicaid waiver to redirect existing federal funds for this purpose. And it will likely require us to ensure that there is an employer payroll tax, but this still ends up costing business and workers less, and we need to ensure that workers are paying less out of pocket than the status quo right now. Ultimately, it's going to require a huge investment of dollars by the state in infrastructure to be able to create a single payer health system. And we need to be able to do that because every person should be able to freely afford and be able to have the healthcare that they need to be human, to be people, and to be people who are valued in the state of California.
I absolutely support a single payer healthcare system and have actively advocated for CalCare in AB 1400 because as a former community health worker myself, I have seen the life-saving benefits of preventative care and the death sentence that can result without it. I have worked with mothers whose only time ever seeing a doctor are the handful of months that they have emergency Medicaid, and the next time they ever go to a medical facility again is if and when they have another child, and that's not how our healthcare system should work. 3 million Californians are uninsured, and that is not acceptable for the 5th largest economy in the world. So firstly, I would work on getting a federal waiver because AB 1400 has been converted into a 2-year bill. Then after the federal waiver, I would figure out how to reconcile the gaps in our budget. Even with the waiver, we're going to have about a $35 million budget shortfall, and I would utilize some of our general fund or some of our $100 billion budget surplus to do that reconciliation. And finally, over 65% of Californians support CalCare as in a single payer plan, and I would make sure that the rest of Californians are on board so we can get it passed.
I think we need to make sure that we don't operate in a space of platitudes. I think we need to make sure, and I believe that we need to make sure that the legislator who is in this district has the ability to work with a broad swath of stakeholders to be able to bring people to the table to ultimately solve and put in place what is going to require a lot of implementation know-how. And that is what I have done for the last 25 years and what I believe is going to be required in order for us to be able to achieve what we all want as an issue in terms of single payer healthcare system. It's going to require work. It's going to require us to be able to roll up our sleeves, and it's going to require us to problem solve.
One of the skills that it's going to take to get something like AB 1400 and universal health care passed is not only policy acumen and understanding the numbers, it's the ability to inspire lawmakers across the board. It's the way that our squad in Congress inspires their fellow lawmakers to make change. None of them had backgrounds in politics, but they had experiences with people. They had life experiences. The stories that I have in my background as a community health worker and a social justice attorney, working with people who were in community health clinics, uninsured, extremely underinsured, is going to inspire me to inspire my coworkers every day in the legislature.
How would you assess how the state values, manages, and maintains open spaces and parks? So that's how the state values, manages, and maintains spaces in open parks. What can you do to improve funding for this work in the
Yeah, firstly, with regard to values, I would firstly pass bills like AB 30 that declares access to nature being a human right and reiterates the fact that all individuals in California deserve access to open space. As far as maintains go, I would make sure that we have a lens of equity in conversations about open space. When we talk about mental health, open space, parks, nature are a part of the solution. And we need to make sure that it's accessible to all individuals. And as far as maintains and manages and protects, we also need to protect the open space that we have through wildfire mitigation actions, including 100 feet of defensible space around all housing, ensuring retrofitting for communities like AB 617, and raising funding for wildfire prevention and resiliency.
I think we've largely funded open space traditionally through state bonds, which has been partially effective. What we need to be able to do is make sure that we're supporting additional funding to ensure that we have capital improvement projects that really go towards renovating and updating our park facilities. We have so many neighbors who care deeply about the parks that they get to use every single day in our communities, and we have so many community-based organizations who are willing to take responsibility and upkeep those neighbors. When we act neighborly and protect our parks, we have the ability to protect our livelihood and our use of open spaces, which is so critical for us. We definitely need to make sure we're increasing funding to ensure park maintenance and that we're making sure to protect our facilities. And ultimately, we need to make sure that our parks are accessible to everyone. I've worked with children who haven't had the ability to experience our parks at all, and not have that part of their lives and be something that they're able to access. So we need to make sure that our parks are accessible to everybody.
Yeah, so I want to speak more to the part of preservation and maintenance of our parks, which has to do with, yes, investing in creating open space, creating defensible land against around houses, but also broadly about climate change. We are nowhere near reaching our goals to be a carbon neutral California by 2035. And we need to implement bills like the two that I was very dismayed about that were converted into 2-year bills this year, SB 260 and SB 467, to hold corporate polluters accountable, and then second, to create buffer zones around oil and gas extraction. Specifically in this district, some of the ways that pollution impacts us is through the transportation of coal, and I'm proudly a supporter of no coal in Oakland, and supported by organizations that have put that initiative to the forefront, including ILWU and the Sunrise Movement.
Thank you. Mia, please round us out on this rebuttal session.
I think at the end of the day, if we're really serious about climate change and climate justice, we need to make sure that our parks are something that we can rely on. It's a shame that we have children and families who don't have access to our beautiful parks. And it's a shame that when they go to those parks aren't maintained in a way that makes them feel like being a part of nature and being a part of open space is something that makes them feel valued, and makes them aware that we need to ensure that our planet is a valuable thing that we need to protect. And so ultimately, I think the state needs to continue to reinvest more funding into open spaces and our public parks, and really focus on facilities improvement in order to be able to do that.
All right, so this audience is, for the most part, I would believe, based in Oakland. So Oakland comprises a really large part of District 18, and it has many unique challenges compared to other cities. So we really want to know, what makes you different, what makes you be able to understand and best represent our city.
The question was, what will you do to understand and best represent our city? I haven't been sitting on boards. I've been working in our community, with our community, and being a part of our community. I established my business, my nonprofit business, in West Oakland. I've worked with our school district for years, directly with our children and youth and our families to be able to ensure that they have the resources that they need. And I've heard and been with them every single day as we've been struggling to be able to make choices, to be able to have pathways to educational opportunity. It is, and I've been doing that for 25 years. Oakland is very much like where I grew up in the Bronx, and it's why I feel so comfortable being a part of Oakland and serving Oakland's community, which I've done for the last 25 years. Oakland has such a wealth of nonprofit organizations, advocates, and leaders and community leaders, people from our Black community, our Latino community, and our API community, and we just need to be able to tap into all of those resources. We have the solutions in our city, and we need to make sure we're able to expand that from our city to the state.
Yeah, I am the only Oakland candidate in this race and have the closest ties to community activist groups in this city. I've represented tenants facing eviction on Seminary Road and have seen why, despite how our city council is helping to expand protections for tenants, the state law ties our hands and allows our elders, our immigrants, so many vulnerable populations to be evicted during the pandemic, even tenants who have never missed a day of rent. I've worked to expand Oakland's government transparency, and while serving on the Oakland Public Ethics Commission, prosecute and fine wrongdoers, both government officials, lobbyists, nonprofit executives, while serving on the Public Ethics Commission, because this is a city with resiliency and beauty and power and strength, but that doesn't help if our city is rooted and mired in corruption and bureaucratic inefficiency. I've worked with people, I've been on the board of 3 different nonprofits in this district and volunteered with several others that work to address the roots of community violence, not just put a band-aid over the problem.
Oakland is one of the richest in terms of opportunity and in terms of resources in the people who are of Oakland, a part of Oakland, and who have built Oakland. The travesty is that we've seen so many of our people, particularly the Black community, displaced over the last decade, in terms of just reducing incredibly the amount of people that we have actually of our community who are still with our community. And it's very important that the state legislator is able to represent Oakland because of the lived experience that they have, as well as the connections and community that they've had to community over the years.
Yeah, the inequitable inequities in Oakland are growing every single day. Oakland is losing its Black population every day because of the history of racist redlining policies, subprime loans, and inequities in contracting. I've worked with small businesses in Oakland trying to get CARES Act funding, and we know which organizations are left out of the pie in the broader picture of supporting small businesses and organizations. And I understand that our pathway out of COVID to development is by supporting economic development and growth, particularly the parts of Oakland that have been left out.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Once again, thank you to all of our candidates. Something that has come up, and I think you all were just getting a chance to touch on it in the last question, has been repeated over and over again. And I kind of want to give you all a minute to really dig a little deeper into what skills, experience do you have that makes you especially qualified to create or make your priorities a reality. And I'll say that again, because it's a chance for you all to kind of speak into yourselves. And that's, what skills and experience do you have that makes you most qualified to make your priorities reality?
I've served as an elected official, and I think when that happens, you have to immediately move into coalition building and understanding from your constituencies, and sometimes making hard decisions that aren't just reliant on hearing the echo chamber, but actually going out and hearing from community in order to be able to understand what stakeholders need and delivering for them. I've done that time tested in being able to do things like deliver on a pay raise for our teachers in Alameda Unified School District and all of our educators, so that our educators were able to receive a $15 minimum wage far in advance of the schedule for California. I've worked and led national nonprofits and local nonprofits as well, and have had the responsibility of supporting, of being an employer, of being somebody that's had to ensure that people have been able to be safe in their work. And I've also led a lot of and been a part of a lot of collective impact strategies where you have a large number of stakeholders coming together in a problem-solving approach to be able to solve the problems that we need locally. And I want to be able to take that opportunity to the state.
The main thing that I'm going to bring is the fact that I have been in the trenches every day throughout my career, listening to people's stories, struggles, experiences. I've been in the rooms with survivors of domestic violence, with their abusive partners, right in the next room, thinking on my feet, how do we make sure we can get you and your 3 children into safety? How can we deal with a crisis in this particular moment and get to a place of sustainable safety and resolution? I've been in the homes of elderly tenants in Oakland wearing a hazmat suit because that's how uninhabitable some of these individuals' living conditions are. I work with people in mental health crisis, making the tough decision whether to call the police or whether to decide that they're going to be okay with other kinds of community support. And to enact the kind of progressive policies that I care about, you have to be a fighter, and that's something I've been all of my life on a personal level. But I've also fought to be the youngest person appointed to the Oakland Public Ethics Commission, the California Commission for API Affairs, the first woman of color appointed to 3 different nonprofit boards here in the district. And a testament to my ability to build coalitions is the fact that in the course of this campaign, yes, I am a first-time candidate, but I was able to get the endorsement of solid progressive groups, labor unions, just democratic establishments, and that's why these are the skills that I would bring.
I think it's critical that we have somebody who has the ability to have the support of people who are already doing the job. I'm thankful to be able to have the endorsement of Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who rarely endorses and sees me as a progressive leader who can help to support this district moving forward. I have the endorsement of the last 3 Assembly members, Wilma Chan, Sandre Swanson, and Rob Bonta, and who know the job, as well as 21 other legislators who are doing this job right now. And I'm really thankful to be able to have the support of council members in this district like Sheng Tao, Lauren Taylor, Treva Reed, Dan Kalb, and Noel Gayu. I think that speaks to the ways in which when people lead and they have been a part of the community, they're able to have the response of the support for the district.
If voters are truly happy with the way our state government runs, then I understand why voters are going to be more comfortable electing leaders that are part of our established system and continue the status quo. But the overwhelming majority of voters in the 18th Assembly District are ready for real change, for an efficiently functioning government, for progressive momentum, to have our Democratic leaders act on their promises to implement a Green New Deal, Medicare for all, declare housing as a human right. And I am going to be someone that actually inspires officials to not take corporate money, to serve the interests of people, and to be an agent of change.
Our next community question, and this is very relationship oriented. So I'm just going to read it off. I think people are just really interested in, what is your relationship with the governor? Are you an independent thinker? How will you manage special interest groups, the progressives, the Republican conservatives? So in other words, what is your plan and who are you? And when you work with people, and especially, because you're looking to represent us.
I'm someone that has been able to have very positive relationships with many people at the state level and the legislature. And I think that the endorsements that I've been able to get and receive from people at the state level, including Fiona Ma, including Secretary of State Shirley Weber, including Alex Padilla, is a demonstration of the actual relationships that I do have with the people who are already there. I am somebody who is focused on coalition building and making sure that I'm not just delivering top lines and platitudes and one-liners and zingers, but somebody who's actually willing to be able to roll up their sleeves and make sure that we're supporting and serving the state of California and the people in this district. People are not an abstraction to me. Their experiences are not theoretical to me. They're experiences that I have and I've shared, and I think is an important part of what needs to be represented in the California State Legislature. Those experiences, those relationships are actually assets that we get to build on as we deal and tackle some of the most complex issues that we need to as a state. And when we fail is when we don't have the ability to actually build those relationships.
It's late at night, so I'm going to use tongue in cheek. I'm going to quote Shirley Chisholm and say, I am unbossed and unbought. I take no corporate money, and I'm proudly endorsed by those who don't either, including Congressman Ro Khanna and Assembly Member Alex Lee. I have the endorsement of some of the most independent thinking organizations that do not care about traditional politics and care about their people, including the historically progressive ILWU, including Our Revolution East Bay, Indivisible, Sunrise Movement, and so many others that care about pursuing a true progressive agenda. I do not take any money from any corporations, and have actively returned $1,000 checks from corporations, and believe that I am going to be a completely independent policy thinker. No one has my ear except for my voters.
I'm very proud to be supported by working families and our labor brothers and sisters like SEIU, the California Professional Firefighters, and CTA. That's firefighters, nurses, teachers, people, workers who are working every single day to be able to make to make our district strong, and who have given their lives and their talent and their time to be able to do that. I have a record to stand on all by my own in terms of making sure that I've served every single day to support our children and families in this community. And the result of that is that I've had people who have acknowledged that and who have partnered with me in making sure that I have the ability to run a strong campaign and hopefully be able to earn the endorsement and support of our community. I'm not going to represent just the voters who vote for me. I'm going to represent every Californian and every community member in this district, because that's what this district deserves.
I just want to reiterate that there are so many incredible organizations rooted here in Oakland that have decided to take a chance on me. It's hard to build trust with someone new, and I get that, but I have shown through my past experiences in direct services, through my work with grassroots community organizations, that I will deliver results. I'm thrilled to be supported by former Black Panthers, by the Oakland Tenants Union, by the first racially integrated progressive labor union in the country, the Wellstone Democratic Club, Oakland's oldest historically Black Democratic Club, and so many others who believe that I will represent this district, and it is worth taking a chance on the person who will be someone different and will be an agent of change.
All right, we are running out of time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. There are a ton of great questions in the chat. We will download it. We'll share it with the candidates, and if they're able, if they want to give some answers to those, we'll be happy to pass that on to the community. So with that, we're going to do the closing statements.
I'm driven to run for state assembly because the voices of community members that I have worked with have been drowned out by our inequitable systems, by our racist systems, by our unjust systems. I've worked with tenants who have been evicted even in the middle of this pandemic, individuals in mental health crisis who have been repeatedly failed time and time and again by our public health care systems. I've worked with victims of abuse, re-traumatized, and in fact criminalized by our so-called justice systems. And I want to take the advocacy I've done right here in Oakland for our communities and translate that vision into a statewide platform for justice, into an avenue to be a more equitable California. And I want to work with all of you to create a California where true racial, economic, environmental equity becomes a reality. Please consider joining our movement today for justice, www.janani4ca.com. Thank you for having me.
We've certainly been through it this last year and a half with COVID, and I think COVID has laid to bear all of our deepest fears in terms of making sure that we have the kind of educational, economic, and health equity that we deserve as members of our district. I'm running for assembly because I know that I have the ability to hit the ground running day one, build on the relationships that I have in our community, and be able to voice those concerns and bring them to the State House and make sure that we can have effective leadership that knows how to be able to problem solve, that can move beyond individual platitudes, and who has the ability to make sure that we can all roll up our sleeves and make sure that our voices are heard. I'm a daughter of advocates. I've turned my advocacy into service, and I'm hoping that you will consider me for as your next state assembly member. It is the highest form of service, and I'm ready to serve.